Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. Not a Merry Christmas for Sepp Blatter, certainly. The FIFA head, along with UEFA boss Michael Platini, banned for 8 years for ethics violations. They'd been suspended in October while an investigation took place, and the issue in question, a $2 million payment that FIFA made to European boss Platini in 2011, with Blatter's approval. The payment was for work done 10 years earlier. FIFA's ethics committee said Blatter demonstrated, quote, an abusive execution of his position as president of FIFA, but said it found no evidence that the money constituted a bribe. Otherwise, the men could have faced lifetime bans. Blatter also fined about $50,000, while Platini received a fine of about $80,000. The two men plan to appeal. The NFL working with traditional media partners and new ones. It recently signed a deal deepening its relationship with app Snapchat. A league business development exec telling the Wall Street Journal the new marketing agreement is a great second screen experience to complement live game broadcasts. Those live games on Thursday nights now up for bids. The NFL looking for offers starting at $300 million per season, what CBS currently pays. Several TV networks asked to make proposals along with Google, Yahoo, Apple, and others. The league telling website Recode there will be a heavy digital component. All of this part of the NFL's goal of reaching $25 billion in annual revenue. And what's in a name? In this case, a natural partnership. Brooke Pancake. No joke. She's trying to move up the money ladder on the LPGA Tour. The professional golfer has a fitting sponsorship. The Chattanooga Times-Free Press reports Waffle House has renewed its deal for another season. Terms not released, but Pancake will make public appearances at restaurants when tour events are located in areas close to Waffle Houses. The company's title remained emblazoned across Pancake's black and yellow golf bag, as well as the tagline, get this, scattered, smothered, covered. No word on whether the International House of Pancakes is looking for an athlete named Waffle to sponsor it. Now to the business of lacrosse, let's talk with George Daniel, head of the National Lacrosse League.
One of the things that we continue to be impressed by is the fan avidity, the strength, the stability of your product and your league. So give us kind of the elevator speech of the evolution of the National Lacrosse League.
Well, the NLL, we're actually going into our 30th season of professional indoor lacrosse. It's kind of hard to believe. The league started off in the mid-'80s, and at the time it was a single entity, meaning that it was owned by one group. They started with 4 teams in the Northeast, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C., playing in NHL, NBA buildings. They started their first season at the old Spectrum in Philly, the Cap Center, the Baltimore Arena, and the New Jersey Meadowlands. And essentially they had one carpet where they moved the carpet around to all 4 arenas, and the players were paid about $50 a game, and they drove to the games and they gave them their jerseys, and that's how they started. And they but right off the bat they drew great crowds. They were drawing 14,000 fans a night in Philadelphia at the old Spectrum, and the league took off from there. Eventually, the original owners of the league sold off the franchises, and the league reincarnated as the National Lacrosse League around 1997. It was originally known as the Major Indoor Lacrosse League, and it's been that corporate structure ever since. So now all the franchises are individually owned. We have 9 teams in the league, 5 in the U.S., 4 in Canada. This is box lacrosse, as it's also known as indoor lacrosse. We're 6 players aside, playing on a configuration very similar to, or exactly the same as an ice hockey rink. We have the boards, the glass. The only difference is the carpet is laid right over the ice, and there's a heck of a lot more goals than your average hockey game.
It's certainly not like the old days where you had to move the carpet around from one place to another. You started in 2000 and the commissioner in 2006. Was there a situation where you kind of looked at some of the smaller markets and said, what am I doing here? This is a very difficult job, or did you see this as all upside?
Well, I think what we saw when we first came on board, when I came in as Deputy Commissioner of General Counsel and then later as Commissioner, I think in those early days what we saw was I think we were empowered by the fact that there were and encouraged about the fact that we were drawing crowds of 14,000 fans a game in places like Philadelphia and in Toronto, and they had drawn 16,000 fans a game in Buffalo in the 90s. And for me, it was, when I follow, all major sports, and I knew about the league, and I remember when the league started, it was around the time I was in law school, but I had no idea the crowds were that big, and considering the league wasn't getting, it was regional and not getting a lot of, exposure in the mainstream media and television, I just thought it was phenomenal that you could draw crowds of that size for any sport without a lot of mainstream exposure. I mean, that told me that it's strong content, and that despite being a little bit under the radar, there's a passionate fan base, a loyal fan base, and that it gave us the confidence that to take the league out west, because at that time most of the franchises were either in New York State or in Toronto or Philadelphia or really just in the Northeast. And what we did then is we then put a team in Calgary and put a team in Denver, Colorado, and we started taking the franchises out west. And there were some hit or misses over the years, and we probably got to some markets too early, and maybe not with the right arena deals and ownership structures. All good people, but we probably didn't put them in a good place for them to succeed with respect to their arena deals. So we've learned a lot since then, and now coming out of it, we have 9 teams that are strong in ownership, and they've been stable, and essentially the same 9 ownership groups that we've had in place for the last 6 or 7 years. There's been very little turnover. So it's a stable organization. We have 5 teams in the U.S., 4 in Canada. 3 of our franchises are owned and operated by NHL owners. We have really some high quality people. In Buffalo, the team is owned by Terry Pegula, who obviously owns the Bills and the Sabres. In Colorado, our team's owned by Mr. Kroenke, who obviously owns the Avalanche and the Nuggets and the Colorado Rapids, among other assets like this, and outside of Denver, like the St. Louis Rams and Arsenal. And in Calgary, the team is owned by the ownership group that owns the Calgary Flames, and the Calgary CFL football team, as well as the junior hockey team there. So, having that commonality of ownership structure, is really great. And also now in New England, we have our franchise is partially owned and operated by the Mohegan Sun group, which also owns the WNBA franchise there. So it's great when we can have that kind of synergy working within our ownership groups, because we're playing 9 home games a year. That's not a big number for an indoor sport when you compare it to the NHL or the NBA. So it's nice to be able to complement an existing sports organization like what we have in those aforementioned cities with an NLL franchise.
George Daniel, Commissioner NLL. I think most of our business listeners around the world will certainly want to hear about lacrosse, but they may care just as much about the template, the stability of the league, the 6-year ownership stability that you have, which is better than most. When you started growing this league from the take the carpet to each place to where it is today, is the strength of market, strength of ownership group, possibility of television, fan avidity, how important are all of those factors, and the similarities and differences maybe between the way the success of your league is measured versus, let's say, the NHL or the NBA? A lot to chew on, but that's I think, at the core of this.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I think all of those are variables. Certainly, the quality. First of all, you have to have a quality owner, and fortunately, we have 9 of those. They've got to have a passion for the sport and for the league, and they've got to have a good arena situation. I think that's the one piece we've learned over the years. We've had teams in some buildings in some very good markets, very big markets, but they've had some good. The arena deals haven't been very good for them, and if the rent is exorbitant, and if they don't have an opportunity to participate in other revenue streams such as food and beverage and concessions and those type of things, it becomes a more difficult business model. Because right now, our primary revenue is ticket revenue. So obviously as we continue to mature as a league, we hope to be able to get to a point where we're getting the rights fees, and we fully expect that to happen on media deals down the road as we increase the number of cities in our league in the U.S. and in Canada. But for now, it's really a local revenue-driven league, and so it's crucial that all of our teams have strong arena deals, and so we've had to have some teams relocate over the years because of that. But that is certainly a primary factor. As far as a measuring stick, we are or measuring us against the other leagues in success. We are actually the third highest drawing professional indoor sports league in the world on an average per game basis, only behind the NHL and NBA. Our average attendance is about 9,000 fans a game. That places us ahead of some leagues that probably get a little more TV exposure than we do, like the WNBA, more than the football, more than the European basketball leagues or any professional indoor sport in the world. So that's something we're quite proud of. And again, it's one of those things that's a little bit under the radar, but it speaks to the fact that despite the fact that we haven't had a lot of mainstream attention, we have a core, passionate fan support that we can build on, and that we truly believe over the next decade is going to be a great time for growth for our league as we continue to add some cities and gain some more critical mass with respect to our fandom and on a national basis. We think it's going to be a great opportunity for us on the media front.
How do you get more and more stable media coverage? Does the prolific digital expansion, the number of channels, the vertical integration between the iPad, mobile, and now everything digital, does that help because it provides more opportunities? Does it hurt because people want different kind of content other than yours? Well, what's the answer to that?
I think it's great for us. I mean, when I first started, it was a big deal if we could have an audio webcast of a game. We had some games on television, but if they weren't on TV, they weren't on linear TV, it was really hard for our fans to find out what's going on. I mean, we had a few teams doing radio, but now, I mean, as we've tried to be at the forefront of digital distribution. For a league like ours, it's really right in our sweet spot, given that we have a younger, passionate fan base. This is where they live. We were the first league, maybe anywhere, to stream over the top. We were doing it as early as 2006. Now, quality wasn't really good, but compared to these days, but we were doing it. And because we saw that, and we saw where things were heading, and we wanted to be out there doing it. And we were, in 2009, we were people could watch the games right from their Facebook feed, right from their Twitter feed. We were embedding the player with our then digital partner, streaming partner. So we felt that this was the place where we needed to be. So we've kind of been, I think, ahead of the curve, and maybe in some cases, maybe too far ahead of it in some respects. But we always have been aggressive in this space. We figured better to be first than last, and so for us, it continues to be a major point for not just the consumption of our live games, but the consumption of our content for our fans. We have real-time video highlights, goals and highlights that go out on our Twitter feed, our team's Twitter feed that gets pushed out on game night and on Facebook. Our fans are on their phones. I mean, we
well,
know
you
that.
Also told me you covet international distribution as well, don't you?
We do, and because we think, look, they're all eyeballs, they're all impressions, and the sport is growing. It's relatively small when you compare it to soccer or basketball, but it's growing. And there's World Field Lacrosse Championships. We just had the World Indoor Lacrosse Championships the last 2 months ago in Syracuse. And so there's an international following. It's growing rapidly in Europe. It's growing rapidly in Australia. And, there's national teams in China. So we're excited about the future. Our games are on currently. They are on in the Pacific Rim and in China, and so we're certainly looking to continue that outreach, and being able to stream the games is just an extension of that.
We're going to get into the emotional psyche of George Daniel. So here's the question. He founded the Black Hills Posse and the IBA, International Basketball Association, the Scranton Miners. Atlantic Basketball Association co-owned the Bellingham Bells. You see Adam Silver and you see Gary Bettman as master salesmen. They have all of these prolific sponsorship. Media is throwing money at their feet. They come to these arenas and they go in private jets. Are you jealous, or do you say, all right, man, I'll be there soon?
No, I'm definitely not jealous. I think, first off, you mentioned those properties, and I think it gives me, having started and taken a different career track than other commissioners and other sports executives, I think has given me a unique perspective sitting in the commissioner's chair. I think I'm the only commissioner to, even though they may be real small minor leagues, but to have been a team owner. I've been a team president in my own league for 1 year. And so I think it gives me a unique perspective from the standpoint of understanding things from a team perspective better. And so I take that into those experiences into every decision I make to understand, because I've been on the other side and I understand how leagues can be perceived, and we've always tried to be even-handed, firm but fair in our decisions when we're enforcing rules and bylaws and those type of things, and try to be respectful of the team's resources and time commitments when we've made requests of things and information, because their job is to sell tickets, and I don't want to get in the middle of that or interfere with that. At the same time, we have to administer our league, and so we have to try to be in sync to support them on the marketing side, but at the same time, manage the competition and make sure everything's being run efficiently. So I think that as far as those experiences, I think it's given me, a unique perspective on that maybe I don't know of any other commissioner in any other league has had. As far as I'm not one who kind of looks at my neighbor and sees what they've got. I don't got. I'm really, being at the NLL has been, for 15 years, has been more than I could have ever asked for, in having the opportunity to work in this league. It's the players are and the coaches are just so authentic. They're down to earth. The average player salary is $20,000 a year. Everybody who's involved in it just loves to be a part of it. And wants to see it grow. There isn't any doubt in my mind that the NLL will someday be a major property. I also know I probably won't be around when that happens, because I think it's going to take a long time for it to really maximize its potential. But there's no question in my mind, though, that it will happen. I think, and you'll see significant growth over the next 10 years or so, just because of the way live sports is being valued at this time with respect to media rights and the demand for it, because it is DVR proof. And so if you can establish you have a passionate fan base and can drive a certain number of viewers, live sports is a premium. It's premium content, and there'll be media providers, whether they're online, whether they're linear, whether they're sponsors, but they'll pay. There's no doubt in my mind that they will pay. And so look to grow and help grow our property. So the future is very bright, and we've laid a great foundation for it. I think for us, it's a matter of blocking and tackling, and adding on some more cities, because we need to have more than 5 cities in the U.S. really to get to where we want to be, and we need a few more in Canada as well. So, but once we get there, and we will. I think you're going to see the NLL on platforms that maybe you're not seeing right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the guy's just not running a league; he's really building and growing a business. George Daniel, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow.